The rain hammered against the corrugated tin roof, each drop a tiny explosion in the quiet night. It was as if the heavens had opened up, unleashing a torrent that seemed to have no end. It was a relentless, drumming rhythm, a symphony of nature that drowned out all other sounds. The rain's steady beat was both soothing and unnerving, a paradox that mirrored the turmoil within me. It mirrored the unease twisting in my gut, a feeling that something was not quite right. The storm outside seemed to echo the storm within, each thunderclap a reminder of the unknown. The air hung thick and heavy, laden with moisture and the scent of rain-soaked earth. It was a night where the atmosphere seemed almost tangible, pressing down on us with an invisible weight. It smelled of damp earth and something else, something ancient and unsettling, like the breath of forgotten memories stirring in the dark corners of the night.
I pulled my son, 6-year-old Mek, closer to me on the porch swing. His small body trembled slightly and I could feel his heart beating fast against my side.
"Papa," Mek whispered, his eyes wide and curious. What was that noise? His voice was barely audible over the din of the rain, but the fear in it was unmistakable.
I strained to hear it again, the sound that had caught Mek's attention. It was faint, almost drowned out by the storm, but there it was, a low, mournful cry that sent chills down my spine. A low, mournful cry seemed to drift from the rice fields beyond our hut. It was a sound that spoke of sorrow and loss, a haunting melody carried by the wind. The fields, usually a sea of vibrant green, were now shrouded in an inky blackness. The rain had transformed them into a dark, foreboding landscape where shadows danced and whispered secrets. The only sound was the relentless rain and the rustle of palm fronds in the wind. It was a night where nature's voice was the only one that could be heard, a symphony of elements in turmoil.
"Just the wind, son," I said, trying to sound calm, though my heart pounded against my ribs. I wanted to believe my own words, to find comfort in the mundane explanation, but the unease lingered.
Mek, unconvinced, burrowed his head into my side. His small hands clutched at my shirt, seeking reassurance in the only way he knew how. He knew, as I did, that the wind didn't sound like a lost soul crying out in the night. There was something more to it, something that defied simple explanations. We sat in silence for a while longer, the storm a raging beast around us. Each flash of lightning illuminated the world in stark, brief moments, revealing the chaos outside. Each gust of wind, every creak of the porch swing, sent shivers down my spine. The house seemed to groan under the weight of the storm, as if it too felt the strain of the night. I desperately wished for the first light of dawn, for the comfort of the sun. The darkness felt endless, a void that swallowed hope and left only fear in its wake. But the night held us captive, its darkness hiding secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. It was a night of whispers and rain where every sound carried a story and every shadow held a mystery. Suddenly, a flicker of light cut through the darkness. It was as if the night itself had been torn open, revealing a secret hidden within its depths. The light was faint at first, barely noticeable, but it grew stronger with each passing second. It danced in the distance, a pale, ethereal glow emanating from the heart of the rice fields. The light seemed to have a life of its own, moving gracefully as if it were performing a silent ballet. It was mesmerizing, yet unsettling at the same time. It pulsed like a heartbeat, growing brighter, then fading, only to reappear moments later. Each pulse seemed to synchronize with the rhythm of the night, creating an eerie harmony that sent shivers down my spine.
Mek, his fear momentarily forgotten, sat upright. His eyes were wide with a mixture of curiosity and terror, reflecting the strange light that had captured his attention. He pointed a trembling finger towards the light. His small hand shook, but his gaze remained fixed on the mysterious glow. "Look, Papa, what is that?" His voice was a whisper, barely audible over the sound of the wind rustling through the fields.
I stared at the light, my blood turning to ice. The sight of it filled me with an inexplicable dread, a fear that seemed to come from the very core of my being. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The light was otherworldly, almost as if it didn't belong in our reality. It wasn't the warm glow of a lantern, nor the harsh glare of a car's headlights. It was something entirely different, something that defied explanation. This light was cold, alien, and it filled me with a primal dread I couldn't explain. It was as if the light itself was alive, watching us, waiting for something.
"I don't know, son," I murmured, pulling him closer. My voice was shaky, betraying the fear I tried to hide. "But stay here, don't move." I needed to protect him, to keep him safe from whatever was out there.
My hand instinctively went to the machete resting beside me. It was a weapon, a tool, but in that moment, it felt like a lifeline. It was a futile gesture, a comfort against the unknown. The cold steel in my hand was reassuring, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. What protection could a blade offer against something as unnatural as the light beckoning from the rice fields? The thought was both sobering and terrifying. The wind howled around us, whipping the flames of the kerosene lamp inside the hut. The flickering light cast eerie shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Shadows danced on the woven bamboo walls, taking on monstrous shapes. Each shadow seemed to tell a story, a tale of fear and uncertainty. Fear, cold and clammy, tightened its grip on me. It was a fear that went beyond the physical, reaching deep into my soul, and still the light in the distance beckoned, pulsing like a dying breath. It was a call, a summons that I couldn't ignore no matter how much I wanted to. "Papa, are you scared?" Mech's voice, small and trembling, broke through my fear. He was watching me, his eyes reflecting the eerie light from the fields.
"No, Mick," I lied, forcing a smile. "I'm not scared, are you?"
He hesitated, then shook his head, his dark eyes never leaving the pulsing light.
"No, Papa," he whispered, but his grip on my arm tightened.
We sat in silence, our breaths misting in the cool night air. The rain continued its relentless assault, the sound almost deafening. The light in the rice paddies seemed to grow brighter, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced and writhed around us.
"What do you think it is, Papa?" Mech asked again, his voice barely audible above the storm. He was trying to be brave, I could tell, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his fear.
And the truth was, I was terrified. I had lived in this village my entire life, I knew every inch of these rice paddies, but this was something different, something old and evil.
My mind raced back to the stories my grandfather used to tell us. Stories whispered around crackling fires, tales of vengeful spirits and creatures that haunted the night. Creatures like the Kraseu. The Kraseu, he would say, was the soul of a woman who died during childbirth, separated from her infant in the afterlife. She wandered the night, a flickering ball of light, searching for her lost child. Woe betide any living soul who crossed her path. "Papa, what's a Kraseu?" Mech's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through my thoughts. I started, realizing I had spoken the word aloud.
"Just an old story, Mech," I said, trying to sound dismissive, but the word hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken dread. Because as I looked out at the pulsing light, I couldn't shake the feeling that the stories were more than just tales.
The wind howled, a mournful, almost human cry, and for the first time that night I wished I hadn't dismissed my grandfather's stories as mere superstition. Because tonight, under this oppressive sky, they felt terrifyingly real. The light began to move, slowly at first, swaying gently like a willow in the breeze. Then, faster and faster it bobbed and weaved through the rice paddies, a macabre dance against the backdrop of the storm. Terror, raw and primal, clawed at my throat. My grandfather's stories, once dismissed as folklore, now played out before my eyes. The Kraseu, it had to be. No earthly light could move with such erratic, unnatural grace.
"Mech," I whispered, my voice hoarse with fear. "Go inside, lock the door. Don't come out, no matter what you hear."
My son, sensing the urgency in my voice, didn't argue. He slipped off the swing and ran into the hut, his small figure quickly swallowed by the darkness. I heard the bolt slide home, the sound oddly final in the storm's fury.
I was alone now, facing the approaching light. The machete felt cold and useless in my grip. What good was a blade against a being of pure energy, a soul consumed by grief and rage? But I would face it. I had to. For Mech. For our village.
The light was almost upon us now, a swirling vortex of energy that pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly glow. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before, a mesmerizing yet terrifying spectacle that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. The colors within the vortex shifted and changed, creating patterns that were both beautiful and horrifying. It felt as though the very fabric of reality was being torn apart by this otherworldly force. I could feel its heat on my skin, a searing, unnatural warmth that seemed to leach the moisture from the air. The heat was intense, almost unbearable, and it felt as though my skin was being scorched by an invisible flame. Every breath I took was labored, the air thick with an oppressive heat that made it difficult to breathe. It was as if the vortex was drawing all the energy from the surrounding environment, leaving nothing but a dry, desolate wasteland in its wake. The air crackled with energy, the hairs on my arms stood on end. It was a sensation that was both thrilling and terrifying, as if I was standing on the edge of a great precipice, about to be swallowed by the abyss. The energy in the air was palpable, a tangible force that seemed to vibrate through my very being. It was a reminder of the immense power that lay within the vortex, a power that could easily consume everything in its path. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the inevitable. This was it. The end of everything I had ever known. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, a crushing sense of finality that left me feeling utterly helpless. There was no escape, no way to avoid the fate that awaited me. All I could do was stand there waiting for the end to come. This was how it ended. In the darkness, under a foreboding sky, with the world around me falling apart. The sense of doom was overwhelming, a suffocating presence that seemed to envelop everything. It was a moment of pure despair, a realization that there was no hope left. The world as I knew it was coming to an end, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Swallowed whole by a being from beyond the veil, my soul forever lost in the darkness. The thought was terrifying, a nightmare come to life. I could feel the darkness closing in around me, a suffocating void that threatened to consume everything. It was a fate worse than death, a descent into an abyss from which there was no return. My mind raced with fear, my heart pounding in my chest as I faced the inevitable. But the end didn't come. Instead, there was a sudden stillness, a calm that seemed to settle over everything. It was as if the storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet, eerie silence. I opened my eyes, half expecting to see the world in ruins, but instead, I was met with an unexpected sight. I opened my eyes to see a figure standing between me and the swirling light. The figure was shrouded in shadow, but there was something undeniably powerful about its presence. It was as if this mysterious being had the ability to hold back the vortex, to protect me from its destructive force. I felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that perhaps all was not lost. A figure I hadn't noticed before, shrouded in shadow but radiating an aura of calm and power. It was a presence that seemed to command respect, a force that could stand against the chaos and bring order to the madness. I felt a sense of awe, a realization that this figure was not just any ordinary being, but something far greater.
"Grandpa, I whispered, my voice barely recognizable. It couldn't be. The figure before me was unmistakable, a face I had not seen in nearly a decade. My mind raced with disbelief, struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. How could this be possible? How could someone who had been gone for so long suddenly appear before me? Grandpa Iam had been dead for nearly a decade. I remembered the day we laid him to rest, the sorrow and loss that had filled my heart. Yet here he was, standing before me as if he had never left. It was a moment that defied all logic, a reunion that seemed to transcend the boundaries of life and death. Yet there he stood, as if conjured from the storm itself. His presence was both comforting and unsettling, a reminder of the mysteries that lay beyond our understanding. It was as if he had been brought back by some unseen force, a guardian sent to protect me in my darkest hour.
"Do not be afraid, grandson," a voice rasped, ancient and strong. It was a voice that carried the weight of years, a voice that I had not heard in so long. It was a voice that brought with it a sense of reassurance, a promise that I was not alone. "I will not let it harm you." His words were a shield, a barrier against the terror that threatened to consume me. I felt a surge of strength, a renewed sense of hope. With him by my side, I knew that I could face whatever lay ahead.
The light pulsed as if enraged by his presence. It was a force that did not want to be challenged, a power that sought to dominate and destroy. But in the face of this overwhelming force, Grandpa Iam stood resolute, a beacon of hope in the darkness. But Grandpa Iam stood firm, a bulwark against the storm and the terror it held. His presence was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, there is always hope. With him by my side, I knew that we could overcome